Hello, Mark.
Hello, Harry.
Amy. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Thanks, Jennifer, for putting this on. And today we have two wonderful poets to read, one from Santa Monica and one from Ireland. Mark Rhodes is a splendid lyrical poet with great narrative strength. He is also a playwright. His last book of poetry, Approaching Darkness, which I love, was published in 2016. He lives in Santa Monica with his wife, author Star Goody. I have enjoyed many readings that Mark has given, reading his poetry or poetry of other poets. Today he is going to talk about and then read The Wasteland, 1922 by T.S. Eliot. Here's Mark Rhodes.
First, I'm going to read a short introduction to the epigraph of the poem, and then I'm going to read the epigraph itself and then go into the poem. Thank you very much. The Sibyl of Cumae was the most powerful female prophetess in the first century AD Roman Greco world. And when the god Apollo granted her, at her own wish, a very long life, she forgot to ask for eternal youth. And so, as the decades went by, she became very old, desiccated, and ugly, and her prophetic powers were very much diminished. And so the epigraph. I saw with my very own eyes the Sibyl at Cumae hanging in a cage. And when the boy said to her, Sibyl, what do you want? She answered, I want to die. The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot. First part, The Burial of the Dead. April is the cruelest month, breeding lilacs out of the dead land, mixing memory and desire, stirring dull roots with spring rain. Winter kept us warm, covering earth in forgetful snow, feeding a little life with dried tubers. Summer surprised us, coming over the Starnperkertsee with a shower of rain. We stopped in the colonnade and went on in sunlight, into the Hofgarten and drank coffee and talked for an hour. In gar keine Russen stamm aus Litauen, est Deutsch. And when we were children, staying at the Archduke's, my cousins, he took me out on a sled and I was frightened. He said, Marie, Marie, hold on tight. And down we went. In the mountains, there you feel free. I read much of the night and go south in the winter. What are the roots that clutch? What branches grow out of this stony rubbish? Son of man, you cannot say or guess, for you know only a heap of broken images, where the sun beats, and the dead tree gives no shelter, the cricket no relief, and the dry stone no sound of water. Only there is shadow under this red rock. Come in under the shadow of this red rock, and I will show you something different from either your shadow at morning striding behind you, or your shadow at evening rising to meet you. I will show you fear in a handful of dust. Frisch weht der Winter heimat zu, mein inneres Kind, wo weilest du? You gave me hyacinths first a year ago. They called me the hyacinth girl. Yet when we came back late from the hyacinth garden, your arms full and your hair wet, I could not speak and my eyes failed. I was neither living nor dead, and I knew nothing. Looking into the heart of light, the silence. Du don't leer das Meer. Madame Sosostris, famous clairvoyante, had a bad cold, nevertheless is known to be the wisest woman in Europe, with a wicked pack of cards. Here, said she, is your card, the drowned Phoenician sailor. Those are pearls that were his eyes. Look. Here is Belladonna, the lady of the rocks, the lady of situations. Here is the man with 3 staves, and here the wheel. And here is the one-eyed merchant, and this card, which is blank, is something he carries on his back, which I am forbidden to see. And I do not find the hanged man, fear death by water. And I see crowds of people walking round in a ring. Thank you. If you see dear Mrs. Equitone, tell her I bring the horoscope myself. One must be so careful these days. Unreal city. Under the brown fog of a winter dawn, a crowd flowed over London Bridge, so many I had not thought death had undone so many. Sighs, short and infrequent, were exhaled, and each man fixed his eyes before his feet, flowed up the hill and down King William Street to where St. Mary Woolnoth kept the hours, with a dead sound on the final stroke of 9. There I saw one I knew and stopped him, crying, "Stetson, you who were with me in the ships at Miley, that corpse you planted last year in your garden, has it begun to sprout? Will it bloom this year? Or has the sudden frost disturbed its bed? Oh, keep the dog far hence that's friend to men, or with his nails he'll dig it up again. You, hypocrite lecteur, mon semblable, mon frère." A game of chess. The chair she sat in, like a burnished throne, glowed on the marble where the glass, held up by standards wrought with fruited vines, from which a golden Cupidon peeped out. Another hid his eyes behind his wing, doubled the flames of 7-branched candelabra, reflecting light upon the table as the glitter of her jewels rose to meet it, from satin cases poured in rich profusion. In vials of ivory and colored glass, unstoppered lurked her strange synthetic perfumes, unguent, powdered or liquid, troubled, confused, and drowned the scents in odors. Stirred by the air that freshened from the window, these ascended in fattening the prolonged candle flames, flung their smoke into the laquiaria, stirring the pattern on the coffered ceiling. Huge seawood fed with copper, burned green and orange, framed by the colored stone in which sad light a carved dolphin swam. Above the antique mantel was displayed, as though a window gave upon the sylvan scene, the change of Philomel, by the barbarous king so rudely forced. Yet there the nightingale filled all the desert with inviolable voice, and still she cried, and still the world pursues, jug, jug, the dirty ears. And other withered stumps of time were told upon the walls. Staring forms leaned out, leaning, hushing the room enclosed. Footsteps shuffled on the stair. Under the firelight, under the brush, her hair, spread out in fiery points, glowed into words, then would be savagely stilled. My nerves are bad tonight. Yes, bad. Stay with me. Speak to me. Why do you never speak? Speak. What are you thinking of? What thinking? What? I never know what you are thinking. Think. I think we are in Rat's Alley, where the dead men lost their bones. What is that noise? The wind under the door. What is that noise now? What is the wind doing? Nothing to gain, nothing. Do you know nothing? Do you see nothing? Do you remember nothing? I remember. Those are pearls that were his eyes. Are you alive or not? Is there nothing in your head? But oh, that Shakespearean rag, it's so elegant, so intelligent. What shall I do now? What shall I do? And I shall rush out as I am and walk the street with my hair down so. What shall we do tomorrow? What shall we ever do? The hot water at 10, and if it rains, a closed car at 4, and we shall play a game of chess, pressing lidless eyes and waiting for a knock upon the door. When Lil's husband got demobbed, I said, I didn't mince my words. I said to her myself, hurry up, Liz, it's time. Now Albert's coming back. Make yourself a bit smart. He'll want to know what you've done with that money he gave you to get yourself some teeth. And he did, and I was there. You have them all out, Lil, and get you a nice set, he said. I swear I can't bear to look at you. And no more can't I said. And think of poor Albert. He's been in the army 4 years. He wants a good time. And if you don't give it him, others will. I said, oh, is there? She said, something to that, I said. And I'll know who to thank, she said, and give me a straight look. Hurry up, please, it's time. If you don't like it, you can get on with it, I said. Others can pick and choose if you can't. But if Albert makes off, it won't be for lack of telling. You ought to be ashamed, I said, to look so antique. And her only 31. I can't help it, she said, pulling a long face. It's them pills I took to bring it off, she said. She's had 5 already and nearly died of young George. The chemist said it would be all right, but I've never been the same. You are a proper fool, I said. Well, if Albert won't leave you alone, there it is, I said. What'd you get married for if you don't want children? Hurry up, please, it's time. Well, that Sunday, Albert was home and they had a hot gammon, and they asked me into dinner to get the beauty of it hot. Hurry up, please, it's time. Hurry up, please, it's time. Good night, Bill. Good night, Lou. Good night, May. Good night. Ta-ta. Good night. Good night. Good night, ladies. Good night, sweet ladies. Good night. Good night. The Fire Sermon. The river's tent is broken. The last fingers of leaf clutch and sink into the wet bank. The wind crosses the brown land unheard. The nymphs are departed. Sweet Thames, run softly till I end my song. The river bears no empty bottles, sandwich papers, silk handkerchiefs, cardboard boxes, cigarette ends, or other testimony of summer nights. The nymphs are departed. And their friends, the loitering heirs of city directors departed, have left no addresses. By the waters of Lehman I sat down and wept. Sweet Thames, run softly till I end my song. Sweet Thames, run softly, for I speak not loud nor long. But at my back in a cold blast I hear the rattle of the bones and chuckle spread from ear to ear. A rat crept softly through the vegetation, dragging its slimy belly on the bank while I was fishing in the dull canal on a winter evening round behind the gas house, musing upon the king, my brother's wreck, and on the king, my father's death before him, white bodies naked on the low, damp ground, and bones cast in a little low, dry garret, rattled by the rat's foot only, year to year. But at my back from time to time I hear the sound of horns and motors, which shall bring Sweeney to Mrs. Porter in the spring. Oh, the moon shone bright on Mrs. Porter and on her daughter. They washed their feet in soda water. Et vous, ces voix d'enfants, chantant dans la capoule. Twit, 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 jug, 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 so rudely forced. Te rude. Unreal city. Under the brown fog of a winter noon, Mr. Eugenides, the Smyrna merchant, unshaven with a pocket full of currants, CIF London, documents at sight, asked me in demotic French to luncheon at the Cannon Street Hotel, followed by a weekend at the Metropole. At the violet hour, when the eyes and back turn upward from the desk, when the human engine waits like a taxi, throbbing, waiting, I, Tiresias, though blind, robbing between 2 lives, old man with wrinkled female breasts can see at the violet hour, the evening hour that strives homeward and brings the sailor home from sea, the typist home at tea time, clears her breakfast, lights her stove and lays out food in tins. Out of the window perilously spread, her drying combinations touched by the sun's last rays. On the divan are piled, at night her bed, stockings, slippers, camisoles, and stays. I, Tiresias, old man with wrinkled dugs, perceived the scene and foretold the rest. I, too, awaited the expected guest. He, the young man carbuncular, arrives, a small house agent's clerk with one bold stare, one of the low on whom assurance sits as a silk hat on a Bradford millionaire. The time is now propitious, as he guesses. The meal is ended, she is bored and tired, endeavors to engage her in caresses, which still are unreproved, if undesired. Flushed and decided, he assaults at once. Exploring hands encounter no defense. His vanity requires no response and makes a welcome of indifference. And I, Tiresias, have forsuffered all, enacted on this same divan or bed. I, who have sat by Thebes below the wall and walked among the lowest of the dead, bestows one final patronizing kiss, and gropes his way, finding the stairs unlit. She turns and looks a moment in the glass, hardly aware of her departed lover. Her brain allows one half-formed thought to pass. Well, now that's done, and I'm glad it's over. When lovely woman stoops to folly and paces about her room again alone, she smooths her hair with automatic hand and puts a record on the gramophone. This music crept by me upon the waters, and along the Strand up Queen Victoria Street. Oh, city, city, I can sometimes hear beside a public bar in Lower Thames Street the pleasant whining of a mandolin and a clatter and a chatter from within, where fishermen lounge at noon, where the walls of Magnus Martyr hold inexplicable splendor of Ionian white and gold. The river sweats, oil and tar. The barges drift with the turning tide. Red sails, wide to leeward, swing on the heavy spar. The barges wash drifting logs down Greenwich Reach, past the Isle of Dogs. La-ya-la, la-ya-la-la, la-la-la, la-ya-la-la. Elizabeth and Leicester beating oars. The stern was formed a gilded shell. Red and gold the brisk swell rippled both shores. Southwest wind carried downstream the peal of bells, white towers. La-ya-la, la-ya-la-la, la-la-la, la-ya-la-la. Trams and dusty trees, Highbury bore me, Richmond and Kew undid me. By Richmond I raised my knees, supine on the floor of a narrow canoe. My feet are Moorgate, and my heart under my feet. After the event he wept. He promised a new start. I made no comment. What should I resent? On Margate sands, I can connect nothing with nothing. The broken fingernails, the dirty hands. My people, humble people, who expect nothing. La la. To Carthage then I came, burning, 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 burning. O Lord, thou pluckest me out. O Lord, thou pluckest. Burning. Death by water. Phlebas the Phoenician, a fortnight dead, forgot the cry of gulls and the deep sea swell and the profit and loss. A current under sea picked his bones in whispers. As he rose and fell, he passed the stages of his age and youth, entering the whirlpool. Gentile or Jew, O you who turn the wheel and look to windward, consider Phoebus, who was once handsome and tall as you. What the thunder said. After the torchlight red on sweaty faces, after the frosty silence in the gardens, after the agony in stony places, the shouting and the crying, prison and palace and reverberation of thunder of spring over distant mountains, he who was living is now dead. We who were living are now dying with a little patience. Here is no water, but only rock. Rock and no water and the sandy road, the road winding above among the mountains, which are mountains of rock without water. If there were water, we should stop and drink. Amongst the rock one cannot stop or think. Sweat is dry and feet are in the sand. If there were only water amongst the rock, dead mountain mouth of carious teeth that cannot spit, here one can neither stand nor lie nor sit. There is not even silence in the mountains, but dry, sterile thunder without rain. There is not even solitude in the mountains, but red sullen faces sneer and snarl from doors of mud-cracked houses. If there were water and no rock, if there were rock and also water, and water, a spring, a pool among the rock, if there were only the sound of water only, not the cicada and dry grass singing, but sound of water over a rock, where the hermit thrush sings in the pine trees, drip, drop, drip, drop, 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 drop. But there is no water. Who is the third who walks always beside you? When I count, there are only you and I together. But when I look ahead up the white road, there is always another one walking beside you, gliding, wrapped in a brown mantle, hooded, and I do not know whether a man or a woman. But who is that on the other side of you? What is that sound high in the air? Murmur of maternal lamentation? Who are those hooded hordes swarming over endless plains, stumbling in cracked earth, ringed by the flat horizon only? What is the city over the mountains? Cracks and reforms and bursts in the violet air, falling towers, Jerusalem, Athens, Alexandria, Vienna, London, unreal. A woman drew her long black hair out tight and whispered and fiddled whisper music on those strings, and bats with baby faces in the violet light whistled and beat their wings and crawled head downward down the blackened wall. And upside down in air were towers, tolling reminiscent bells that kept the hours, and voices singing out of empty cisterns and exhausted wells. In this decayed hole among the mountains, in the faint moonlight, the grass is singing over the tumbled graves about the chapel. There is the empty chapel, only the wind's home. It has no windows and the door swings. Dry bones can harm no one. Only a cock stood on the roof tree, cocorico, cocorico, in a flash of lightning. Then a damp gust, bringing rain. Tonga was sunken, and the limp leaves waited for rain, while the black clouds gathered far distant over Himavant. The jungle crouched, humped in silence. Then spoke the thunder, da, tata. What have we given? My friend, blood shaking my heart, the awful daring of a moment's surrender, which an age of prudence can never retract. By this and this only we have existed, which is not to be found in our obituaries or in memories draped by the beneficent spider. or under seals broken by the lean solicitor in our empty rooms. Dayitvam. I have heard the key turn in the door once and turn once only. We think of the key, each in his prison. Thinking of the key, each confirms a prison. Only at nightfall, ethereal rumors revive for a moment a broken Coriolanus. Zamyata. The boat responded gaily to the hand expert with sail and oar. The sea was calm. Your heart would have responded gaily when invited, beating obedient to controlling hands. I sat upon the shore fishing, with the arid plain behind me. Shall I at least set my lands in order? London Bridge is falling down, falling down, falling down. Pois scosi no foco che li affina, quando fiamuti calidon. Oh, swallow, swallow, le pranced aquitaine alla tour oboli. These fragments I have shored against my ruins. Why then I'll fit you, Hieronymo's mad again. Tata, Dayitvam, Kamyata, Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Thank you, Mark. That was marvelous. I loved all the different voices, the resonance, everything was just perfect. Thank you very much for that rendition of The Wasteland. It was a wonderful reading. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Harry. Harry, can I listen to the other poet?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right.
You're on for the whole duration.
All right.
Our next poet is Jamie O'Halloran. Jamie O'Halloran was born on Long Island and raised there in New Orleans and in Seattle, where she received her MA in English from the University of Washington through its creative writing program. Her poems have appeared or are forthcoming in more than 50 publications, including Prairie Schooner, the Seattle Review, Poetry Flash, and Yankee. Her chapbooks include Sweet to the Grit, 1998, and The Landscape from Behind, 1997. She won the Anne Stanford Poetry Prize. Her poem Knockwood was published on 10,000 postcards and distributed throughout Los Angeles as part of the Sonnets at Work project. Jamie has read her work at the Los Angeles County Museum of Art and KPFK, among other places. Jamie retired from teaching with the Los Angeles School District. She and her husband now live in rural County Galway, Ireland. Jamie O'Halloran's poetry is precise, lyrical, well observed. She's a superb and compassionate poet. Here's Jamie O'Halloran.
All right. Thank you, Harry. Thank you very much. And Mark, thank you. Gosh, I haven't read The Wasteland in many years. And I was reminded of when I first read it in college that my professor said, he said, just listen to it. Don't try to understand it. And yeah, it was a beautiful reading. I appreciate it very much. I wanted to begin by reading a poem by another poet, Evan Boland, major, wonderful Irish poet who just passed away about 2 months ago. And here it is, it's called Quarantine. In the worst hour of the worst season, of the worst year of a whole people, a man set out from the workhouse with his wife. He was walking, they were both walking, north. She was sick with famine fever and could not keep up. He lifted her and put her on his back. He walked like that west and north, until at nightfall, under freezing stars, they arrived. In the morning, they were both found dead, of cold, of hunger, of the toxins of a whole history. But her feet were held against his breastbone. The last heat of his flesh was his last gift to her. Let no love poem ever come to this threshold. There is no place here for the inexact praise of the easy graces and sensuality of the body. There is only time for this merciless inventory. Their death together in the winter of 1847. Also what they suffered, how they lived, and what there is between a man and woman, and in which darkness it can best be proved. Evan Boland. It's hard to live in Ireland without being reminded of the famine. And just one of our regular walks, just, I don't know, a kilometer away, is a field where we see a Connemara pony grazing. It used to be the workhouse cemetery, graveyard. And it wasn't consecrated until decades and decades after it used. And it was, there was also a fever hospital, they called it. And this is decades after the famine, but it's all there. And I think it has a lot to do with how people respond to any event, the events of today, with how people here responded to being in quarantine and lockdown. And this is another poem that I want to read because it's happening again. And I think that there was a reading for this poem was in the anthology Grand Passion, Poets of Los Angeles and Beyond. And I'm pretty sure, Harry, you're in that, and Holly was represented in that book. And that probably is the first time I heard both of you read, may have been at the reading for that. So this is called After All the Seasons, Los Angeles, Spring, 1993. It is a year later, April, and while we wait the next verdict, I watch the jacarandas, how their yellowish leaves finger the sky where the old seed packets hang like dry small purses of change from the new leafed trees. The blossoms haven't opened. The violet hasn't yet sprayed its confusion of flowers into the sky. Last year this time, the gutters ran full with purple, the season's contusions. I remember the violet city I first saw driving above Los Angeles. The horizon sprawled from the freeway like a blue awning, the jacarandas spreading habit. A year with nothing of change, and far into May, the jacaranda doesn't bloom. There are pines that shelter their future in cones so tight they will not open without flame of such intensity the forest is consumed. This poem is more recent. That's poems written a while ago. This is a recent poem from last year that's going to be in this really exciting publication. It's called Painted Poetry. Is a Dutch painter who writes poetry often, and he likes. He will invite poets to write about his paintings, or he'll invite poets to write on a particular theme or story, and then he responds to that in painting. And he's very fond of, well, I don't know if fond's the right word, but the Icarus story is one that he returns to often. And so I was given the opportunity to write an Icarus poem and send it in, and it's going to be in that publication. This is Icarus Talks to Karen. Dad didn't tell me how it would feel, the river of sky sliding under and over this new-formed body. I flapped the wings, couldn't call them mine. So many feathers, so light, and the bees' work weighed next to nothing. There I was, leaping into the other side of the window of that tower, the only place I knew. A jump into Olympus it could have been, with Phoebus Apollo shining so brightly off the peaks and the sea below. What joy! Surely this was rapture. Surely freedom was a divine ambrosia. Was there anything but the sun? I couldn't smell the beeswax melting, or see the feathers counting off a whirl of cloud about me. All was euphoria, and then the sea surrounded me and filled my lungs with salt. You see, Karen, no one thought to rest a coin on my tongue, so I arrive without the fare. Have mercy, ferryman. Take me across the Styx. Give me the freedom I died for. I was pulling the poems together for this, and thank you again, Harry, for having me and for putting some of my poems on your blog. I came across this is another old poem, and I'd forgotten about. It's kind of a one-off. It doesn't really belong in a group or anything, but it was inspired by a friend. I guess something had me do it, respond to her, and it's a playful poem, and I wrote it for Nicole Harvey. Leave me my moon. Her bow under snow bending where the lover hides his heart. Her pine cone shut dark in its seed keeping. Her owl rush over my sleep where my dream reads what she keeps under her wing. Her stirruped and scooting south to winter, speckled blanket at her chin. Her bone-fine platter and cratered spoon. Her sanguine light pulling the sprout from its shell. Her shift from the man with the lantern and thorn into green-veined cheese, into a rabbit over China, into a rabbit over Mexico, and the stars arch round. Her sickle in night's shed, her mouth of slumber, her same, her change. I was kind of fascinated. At that time I was reading a lot about the moons, writing about moons, and I thought it was interesting that in China, the moon is represented as a rabbit. I mean, there's folklore in China and in Mexico of the moon being a rabbit. I don't know if it is in other places or not. And this is one of the poems, Harry, that you decided to include on your blog. And this is about my Irish grandmother. I'm living in Ireland because we got to come here because I have dual citizenship through my grandmother. I never met her. She died when my mother was young, but she was in County Mayo. And I used to write a lot about Ireland before I stepped foot on the shores here, but this is called Water of Life. Water of Life is the English translation of the Gaelic word for whiskey. Water of Life. My grandmother talks to my mother. I left County Mayo, God bless me. What left me was the reigning rhyme of my mother's name, dried with the old tongue, like kelp on the sandy rocks. I kept my name, but my sister wouldn't have hers. Bridget became Delia. Is that where we broke off? Too fine she was herself, with me still in service before your father gave me my home. Each brother gone, back to Sheshia, dead or vanished into drink. Boys never born were dug from the grave of my womb. The sons who came before and after you, daughter, I kept, until they took you away. Or did I give you over when I tried too to disappear in the water of life that I swallowed thirsty for home? And then I've been writing a bit. Well, I've written a lot after each visit to Ireland, and I want to read some from actually some of the first poems I wrote staying in this part of Ireland. We, when we first started coming to Connemara, to County Galway, we stayed in an area of our village. It's called Uachtarard, and there's a little settlement that's kind of part of the village called Porridge Town. And we were told by our friend that the name probably came because it was probably had pots of porridge. It was probably a feeding station during the famine time. So this is called Ponies, Porridge Town. The clouds bowing back after the day's sprinkle, I step onto the slippy porch to look for stars. Some gauziness remains in the rain-fresh sky, but it is blackish and open enough that pricks of starlight shine through. The first horse neighs, and I imagine the Connemara pony across the lane, its roughing cry answered from another point on the compass. Then a third. They call out to each other, these oat-colored ponies from their paddocks of mud. Seldom do I see one with company, always alone, in their drunken fields ruined for grazing. Now, in the early dark, they whinny and snort about the muck, the strangers, the mockingbirds' hectoring song. They, too, lift their heads, searching for Pegasus, winged cousin, cast into nightly retirement in space, his bright dotted figure trotting above. And this one is interesting. This one is actually where we are right now. It's a little further away, but when we moved into our house in February, and more stars here. The little settlement where we are called is called Conroyar East. Out the window, the chalky moon nests in my thumbnail is stuck over Clush Hill before I can see the wind farm scarecrow arms swiping the air from the birds. Whitewashed the sky is, rinsed of the night before when it had emptied itself of cloud and Orion's belt was a studded brilliance. That was when we fixed ourselves on the dark lane beside the towering laurel, struck by living so close to the stars. And then this is a couple others that recent from living here. I've discovered that I really don't need to go looking for kindling wherever I go. There's this fascination with wood because we have a wood stove and a fireplace, and we need them for warmth. This is called guilt. Yesterday, I saw a beauty, a former tree laying against the hedgerow, barkless, sinewy and bleached, more like a find along the strand, tossed up by the ocean, not thrown down by a winter storm. I picked it up. Its dearth of weight surprised me. Airy it was, all the carbon, a mass of atoms, tumbling through ether or notion of limb. Now on the floor beside the fireplace, it changes from branch into something other than tree, with a bend in it so much like a knee or elbow. This evening, it is the heart of our early fire, expanding to fill the hearth. Crooked fuel, I have to feed the embers into flames again with the driest kindling, reedy branches of hydrangea. Its joint chars into a black frown, mouth seared by fiery licks. Mistaking this heat giver I stole for a gift. And this, I took a little workshop online last month, and this is kind of an exercise. We were looking at different forms, and it's one of these sort of like a recipe, something. Anyway, what came together is a ghazal that is related to the lockdown, and but as someone said, it's sort of a tour of Connemara, our area of Ireland. And if you probably all know it, Caiozzo. It's an Arabic, or I think it originally was Arabic, but also we think of it often as a Persian form. But the last words of the first stanza of the couplet, it's all in couplets, the last word is repeated, and then that last word is the last word of the last second line in each couplet. So I wasn't just being redundant. Okay. I hope I'm coming through okay. I just got a message that we're unstable here. Oh well. Caiozzo. Furled into nacre, the oyster naps in Galway Bay for shelter. Months without ours are safest, when her bed is a safe at home shelter. Connemara expresses spring with a free sprinkling of lambs, springing about the mountainside, bleating for their mam's suckling shelter. May explains her rush to summer with wild garlic and violet rhododendron. Sun almost forgets to set. Drowsy star sinks later each day into its horizon shelter. The footpath tracing the river is empty again this morning, as the river herself. A heron, keen for salmon, stations below the rocks where small fry shelter. These weeks, tight wound in the 2K circle, Jamila paces each day, locked down in this unbarred prison, this homely cell, her shelter. And is there... We just had our furniture arrive 3 days ago, and which meant we also got our printer and stuff. And there's something I'd written that I wanted to share with you, and I tried printing, and I might have it up. If I don't have it immediately, I'll move on. I think I don't have it. No. Okay. Okay. I'll just read a couple more. Sometimes, headline things that are going on are inspiring. So headline just this headline grabbed me a few months ago. Conjoined twins linked at skull are separated in London hospital. We developed outward, our spines and limbs traveling away from our core, conjoined at the crown. Our nice hair, as Ma called it, swirled, hiding the link of our skulls and scalp and veins. I wanted to be tall, but could grow only longer. For 2 years, our heads shared a pillow, a lifetime without seeing our father at the same time, or looking in the same direction. Now the vessels have been combed apart and our hair untangled. My sister, my anchor, you are not me, but my mirror. Today I see your face. And I'm going to read 2 more poems that are short. One is a poem that another one that Harry included on his blog. And my husband's sitting right here. So this was a brand new courtship kind of poem. So discovery. And I mentioned the Peter. I think Carrie told you that the Peter the song is about was Peter Schneider. Singing the Little Flower. By the window, westward with sun and early green, trees not yet budding, you guide me through this song by our friend Peter, newly dead, with the words of our cherished saint, Therese. It is closeness that keeps my voice thin as thread, basting the low, difficult run. My ear wants to sweeten the deliberate dissonance. I want to keep my throat floating with the higher measures. I want to say it is Thérèse in my mouth, her devotion driving hours through Peter's notes. This spring light low through the glass. But it is your touch to the keys, your playing, your face turning to mine that makes the singing a song. And this is a more recent poem. Last one is Obad, a song to the dawn. Okay. Rising from our bed in another room, I open the blind to see how this day is beginning. The sky putty gray within an hour of dawn. To the east, the slimming moon rests in its bright cradle. Between us, bats scatter with their obtuse wings, aerial and scalene. Fitful in their flight between our house and orange tree, they almost meet midair, but don't. I hope they have had their fill of mosquitoes. I hope our course is nothing like theirs.
That was fabulous.
Thank you, Harry.
Thank
you very much.
That was fabulous, Jamie. I love your use of nature, your focus on nature, family, home, love, Ireland, and your also exploration of language, your excellent use of language, and your experimentation of forms. Thank you very much. What a wonderful reading. We have a few more minutes left. What I'd like to do is each of you, if you may, each of you take about 2 minutes and just tell me, answer the question. Let's start with you, Mark. Why is it poetry important to you?
Well, I wrote my first poem when I was 14 years old, and I don't know, it just kind of hangs around like a bad habit, you know what I mean? And it's so that's about it. I mean, I'm just compelled to do it. You know, I haven't done it much lately. Like Jamie, she's writing like a house afire, but I guess I'm not. And I want to say one thing to Jamie. My good friend Tim Robinson had just passed away.
Oh,
Yeah, I visited Tim many times,
oh.
a couple times anyway, in Roundstone. And we've been all over Ireland. My wife has a book called Of the Seal and the Gigs. And so where exactly are you in Connemara?
We're in Uchterard. It's called the Gateway to Connemara.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
There's that long road that goes way up there from...
Yeah, and where our restrictions as of Monday, we're going to be able to... Is it Monday? We can go to Roundstone. We haven't been able to travel that far, so...
Yeah.
I've been really anxious to see the sea.
Yeah, and Tim's house there in Roundstone is University Galway, has all of his stuff there, so you can drop in, I guess. I don't know. And
I have his book Connemara that I haven't. I mean, I just got it recently to read. So
I've corresponded with him for many years, and I'm glad I met you because I think your poetry is just wonderful.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
Very much.
Jamie, what would you say in a couple of minutes? What drew you? What's important to you about poetry?
Well, when I was in high school, I spent a lot of time with music. I had my guitar all the time. I was singing. I was in the art room doing art. And in college, at first, I tried being an art major. I had thought about music, but I really wasn't skillful enough. And then I was writing, and I was trying to write fiction, trying to write essays. And then I finally took a poetry workshop from Nelson Bentley, who every time I'd see him on campus, he'd say, "Well, are you going to join? Are you going to join?" I finally did, and I found that I had music and visual art and storytelling all in one, all wrapped up in poetry. So I got to do all of that. And then the music of poetry just draws me in. So, and as Gwendolyn Brooks said, poetry is life distilled. And that's what I keep going back to it.
You know, T.S. Eliot, he said, since Mark read Wasteland, he said poetry is one person talking to another person. And he also said that poetry should include, you know, something about the age. And that's what I value about it. I mean, I've been to so many readings as you two have, and it's just so transfixing just to sit and gaze and listen to one person, you know, speak her or his poetry. And, you know, I also think it values the individual. I mean, we're in a time for many years of mass media, and, you know, they want everybody to do the same thing and go for popularity, likes, and this and that. But it's just fun to see the complexities of each individual and the depth of each individual. Like, it's about 1 minute to 2, and there's another program coming along on 2. And so I just want to thank you, Mark from Santa Monica, and thank you, Jamie from Ireland, for both of your wonderful poetry. It's been a real pleasure and a learning for me. I love to learn, and I've learned a lot from both of you today. So thank you very much. And now I will turn this over to our wonderful director, Jennifer Clymer. Thank you both. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Harry. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Jennifer. Okay.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Long shoot.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much for sharing your artistry.